Hello, my name's Alex, and welcome to another episode of the Peace Podcast. Today we're sitting down with Adam Vogal, who does a lot of different things in the community and is part of too many organizations to name. But for one, he is providing some trainings with PACs for us, which is awesome. He is part of PeaceVoice as the associate editor, which is a really cool program that gets the word of peace education and scholarship out. He is a former student of Nonviolence, United for Nonviolence leader, and is part of the Portland Peace Team and the Fellowship of Reconciliation, amongst a bunch of other things. So welcome, and thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Alex. I appreciate you inviting me.
How are we doing today?
Good. It's been a good day so far. Busy, but good.
We both got our coffee. That's good.
Yeah, thank goodness.
So I guess to start off, one of the things that I wanted to kind of touch on was coalition building, because I know you've done a lot of work with that, and it's a really useful tool that I feel like is kind of underutilized and relatively unknown.
Right. Basically, no group can do anything that needs to be done on their own.
Yeah.
It requires coordination. It requires passion, of course. But it also requires us to understand that all of our causes are linked. So we believe in a movement of movements. Mm-hmm. So when we all come together, the bigger picture, which is peace and justice prevailing, that happens not only in climate justice, not only in oppression work, not only in housing, not only in poverty. All these things are intertwined and interlinked. And finding ways that we can work together with all the groups is how we're going to overcome the biggest problems, which, as far as I'm concerned, are a reality that our government does not serve us at this point, and I don't believe has the intention to. So the coalition building work is creating a way for us to circumvent or go around the government so that we can get our needs met, mm-hmm. And everybody's needs met equally. And it's a lot of work, but things are coming together.
Yeah. Well, and that's certainly something that I've noticed is there are so many nonprofits or organizations that are, doing similar things and trying to, create positive social change in our community, in the world, and throughout the country. But, they're not working together with other organizations, even if they have really similar mission statements or, objectives and goals. I think that it's important that they, find where they can meet together to work on things.
Yeah, and the issues are very complex. So where it might seem like the groups are working on the same issue, they may be working on the same overall issue, mm-hmm. but coming at it from a different angle.
Different lenses.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think a lot of the problem is America has a lot of leaders and not enough people who stand up second to say, I'm going to follow this leader and support them in the way that they're doing their work. And so we have a whole lot of people starting organizations right now rather than feeding into the organizations that are already doing the good work. And that's problematic. Mm-hmm. But that's being overcome by coalition building. So it doesn't matter if we have 500 different organizations doing the same thing. If they're all talking to one another and working together, then it's like one large organization.
Yeah, with the same or similar member base that kind of know about each organization.
Right.
I think that's important.
And I think it's important to be intentional.
Yeah.
If you're going to go out and you're going to start a new organization that's going to be doing the exact same thing as, say, Greenpeace,
Sure.
for example, then you know what? You better be learning from what Greenpeace has already done.
Yeah, you need to do your research and look at where the needs are and get your logic models
Indeed.
so that you have a clear, path that you're walking along.
Right.
So where do people get started with coalition building? I mean, it seems like a really kind of a big, daunting task to get organizations together, maybe.
Well, I think really it really depends on where your focus is. There are groups out there like the Peace and Justice Studies Association that they put together academics with activists, and so it creates a situation where they're able to take what's going on out in the field and put it into practice in what we're studying. In what, and then at the same turn, what we're studying is informing what's going on out in the field.
Yeah.
So it really depends on where your focus is. If you want to create real change, you have to be abreast of what's going on in the situations that we're working on in the field, but also in the classroom.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that answered your question.
No, that makes sense. And I think to speak to that, that's really one of PAC's main goals. I mean, we see that there certainly is, for one, a disconnect from what peace work is actually being done in the world, like organizations that are doing the work, and how people view peace or peace work, or even think about how things get done. You see a problem like world hunger or whatever, but you don't see the organizations that are working towards it and the problems that they face. And the other thing is bridging the gap between scholarship and like actual activism or peace work.
Right. And I think the important thing to remember right there is it's the scholarship that we work from that lets us know that nonviolence works.
Yeah.
If we didn't have the likes of Erica Chenoweth and Gene Sharp,
exactly,
the big names in nonviolence, we wouldn't have the actions going on that we have right now. I think a lot of people, now that they know violence is more effective, twice as effective as violence, nonviolence is more effective, there's more groups turning to that as their first option. And then you have other groups that are behind the times and either are unaware of this reality or don't care, and they're the ones out there that are causing issues like your Antifa and your Black Bloc, and so that's problematic. But at the same time, we, even in our groups, we've worked with them. With the groups I've worked with, we've worked with the Black Bloc, and they've been extremely respectful when we say it's a nonviolent action. We've worked very hard to put this together, and they've come and lent their support to our nonviolence. So that just goes to show that everybody can be brought into the fold of nonviolence. It's just a matter of opening up the dialogue.
Yeah.
Which is important, because if we're excluding anybody, then we're not doing what we should be doing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You can't build a coalition if you're excluding people.
That's true.
You need to find a way to bring them in.
Yeah, I mean, and some people make the argument that Black Bloc and organizations like that are there to protect protesters, right? And I don't know if that's, I don't know what kind of argument that is, right?
Well, but I'm the coordinator for the Portland Peace Team, and that's our mandate.
Yeah.
Our mandate is to not only protect the people participating in these movements, but also to keep the movements looking good and so that they can do what they're there to do,
and
which is change the social issues that they're dealing with.
it's so hard because every protest that I have observed, the majority of people are nonviolent and just there to, advocate for the issue involved, right? But there's always seems to be some little bit of vandalism or what have you, or altercation with the cops that really ruins the message for what everyone else is trying to do.
Right. And so, yeah, and the good thing that having a peace team present at a movement is when those little things come up, we have people trained to go de-escalate those situations so that it doesn't influence or affect the way that the public sees the march or sees the movement or sees the it creates a growth potential when you have a peace team there de-escalating versus them taking away from your movement's growth through violence or some violent action. Because I'm telling you, if you're a let's say you're a housewife in Tigard and you want to take your kids to the movement's whatever, it could be a climate movement or whatever, and you see that the night before that same movement had violence in it, you're less likely to want to take your kids there.
Exactly.
But like you have a situation like the Women's March,
that was
and you have completely different. You have literally millions of people with their children. Well, what made that possible? Those are the things that scholarship studies, so that we know we can build our movements and make them bigger. And I think a big part of that too is having the nonviolent security there, which the Portland Peace Team was there, and in fact every event that I've attended so far, and I've been doing this about 4.5 years, I've only had to de-escalate people maybe 5 times.
Yeah.
So for the most part, we have very, and that is part of our dictate, is that they have to be a nonviolent movement. They have to espouse nonviolent values. And that makes our job so much easier. When we arrive, everybody knows why we're there. So it makes, and de-escalating your own people within the movement is huge.
Yeah.
So,
would you say you normally have to de-escalate people within the movement, or people that are essentially protesting the protest?
Both.
Both.
It's both, but I would say to a degree, we deal with people who are very impassioned about the things that they're there for.
Certainly.
So yeah, it's both. But at the same time, you want to be inclusive. You want to include people into what you're doing, so that the people that are there who are against whatever, and we're nonpartisan when we go in there. We're not taking sides except for the side of nonviolence.
Yeah.
So you and whomever can disagree with whomever, and as long as it's not going to escalate into violence, we're not going to get into the midst of that.
Yeah.
Because they value their opinions, they have passions,
Sure.
But when we see that starting to escalate and it looks like it could go towards violence, then we'll pop in there and say, hey, let's chill out a little bit.
Well, I'm not part of the Portland Peace Team, but I would be interested in getting involved. But one of the, I don't remember which one it was, but I think it was directly after the election, and obviously people were very tense and there's a lot of emotion, but there was 2 men that were, they were there to start trouble with everyone else, essentially. They were, preaching and had, I don't know exactly, but I kind of was trying to help out in that there was other protesters kind of yelling at them, and they were just arguing, and it was getting really escalated. And I was like, guys, come on, this isn't helping. We need to stay peaceful, stay nonviolent. You don't want to fight these people. Just leave them alone if you don't agree with them. Just go away.
Mm-hmm.
And they said that I am an apologist or I'm a traitor or whatever. They got mad at me
Right.
for trying to just cool down the situation.
Right.
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that does happen. And there are skills we use. It's called the Clara method of de-escalation.
Oh, yeah.
And we do teach skills to help you deal with that. So it would be well worth your time. We have monthly meetings where we drill on these skills. Yeah, you should come. That would be valuable. Oh, and so we had the training for. We actually just did a training for Greenpeace for the People's Climate March that's coming up on April 29th.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, and we did a training for about 30 people. And one of the guys, his name's Frank, he wrote me yesterday and told me that he went to the PGE event and already used the skills. Yeah, he de-escalated some of the police and some fellow protesters.
Wow.
So yeah, it's great. Really, that for me is so encouraging because we teach this so that we can have a better world.
Yeah.
And here he is out there doing it.
Already.
Yeah, it was cool.
I certainly think the more people with, conflict resolution skills or de-escalation, which I guess is a conflict resolution skill, but
right.
Any of these things is just going to make it easier to coexist with one another.
Well, and the thing is, and this is the thing that I've been thinking about for the past 10 years. Why is it that we don't teach these skills, which are readily accessible and available, and they're out there in the world? Why are they not taught in our schools?
Yeah, you would think from an early age.
Yep.
The younger that you're able to have these skills and tools to kind of deal with conflict, I mean, the better you're gonna be at it.
Yep. And so if we started a program where we're teaching our children, our kindergartners.
Sure.
I raised my son in a nonviolent household. So and everything he learns is revolved around how to deal with conflict in a positive way. Mm-hmm. And if we did that in kindergarten and just took it all the way up through high school and they had these tools, these skills, don't you think that the world would be a much better place? Instead of, here, let me teach you how to fight, let me teach you how to go beat somebody up, or let me teach you to defend yourself in a way that's going to increase the violence in the other. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Or even just kind of allowing the development of unproductive ways of dealing with conflict.
Yeah. There's a better way to do things, and everybody knows it, and we need to teach it and start doing it.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it.
So, did you catch any of the coverage about the most recent clash at Berkeley?
I did. Yeah, that was really, really a sad situation. And if you look at how it's blown up since, and the way people are viewing it as a good bad or a bad bad, like people can be good or bad. There's a whole spectrum.
Sure.
In that particular situation, it was people behaving badly because they were passionate about whatever they were feeling. And I always find it interesting that where there's injustice, where people are promoting unjust things, other people will come in and be unjust in their dealing with the injustice. And I think that was a situation of what was going on down there in Berkeley. But I don't believe that violence solves anything. I think it escalates things to a point where if no one's being heard, nobody's being understood. And if nobody's even attempting to be understanding of anything, that's the problem.
Yeah.
You know? And so I had a friend who has an empathy tent down there. It's a place where people could go in and be heard and listened to. And I mean, when it comes right down to it, really that's what people want.
Sure.
They want to be heard. They want their point to count, or their points or their opinions to matter.
Mm-hmm.
Right or wrong, you know, they need to be heard.
Yeah.
And so his name's Edwin. He has an empathy tent there for that purpose.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, it was a beautiful idea, and he's actually a really neat guy. But I don't think they had a peace team down there, and I think that would have been valuable in that situation to de-escalate those high temperatures. And
yeah, well, to me it seemed like, you know, the people that participated in this, which was, I think it was a pro-Trump rally, and then there was a counter rally or a protest to the rally by, I think, generally Antifa and Black Bloc and just other individuals that might not be affiliated. But I think they were going into that expecting to clash and hoping to clash.
mm-hmm.
And it's just so unfortunate because, like you said, with this empathy tent, you know, the way to bridge understanding and, you know, perspective taking and all these things is through conversation and dialogue and being heard and voicing your grievances. I mean, obviously both groups feel like they have legitimate grievances that they feel like they can't, you know, articulate without violence at this point. It seems like. And it's hard because it also seems like it's only making the divide that much larger. Because I am on forums online for both sides, essentially, just to see what is out there in the dialogue amongst people in each group.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, on one side, they call the other people fascists and Nazis and things that are, you know, very dehumanizing for one and demifying and, you know, just not productive to being able to actually have conversation with them. Because once you call someone a Nazi, you're basically saying that you refuse to have any sort of dialogue with them, because why would you have any conversation with a Nazi?
Right.
And then on the other side, you know, they call the people, you know, all sorts of things like snowflake, and they're just sad that they lost the election, and so forth. And, you know, there's a sense of, you know, enmification on that side as well.
Mm-hmm.
And just by fighting and getting hurt and getting even more, you know, separated.
I think that's a good point. And if we look at the outcomes of that, I mean, look at the outcome of the violence that happened there that day. Whose mind was changed?
Nobody's.
Yeah. What difference did that make, with the exception of the people that were harmed directly by that violence and the society that's harmed directly by that violence?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make any positive difference in our world at all.
Mm-mm.
And that's the saddest part of it, is these groups who are passionate about their beliefs, and it seems like they're more passionate about being against somebody else's beliefs
than they are for their own beliefs on the matter.
Yeah, because it was interesting. When we had the event here in Lake Oswego, we had a group of, I would say, roughly 500 people.
Yeah, and that's not a small
400 or 500 people, yeah,
for Lake Oswego.
And there was a whole group, and literally we lined, 10, 11 blocks of the road with peace and justice and signs of compassion and caring for our community. And it was wonderful. And about 2 hours later, the pro-Trump rally started. And where the group that we were providing nonviolent security for had been over this 11 blocks. Once the Trump rally started, they all went, everybody who was along this whole 10, 11 blocks scrunched up into a block and a half.
Wow.
Right across from where the turn was, where the Trump people were going.
So you create a bottleneck, essentially.
Well, yeah, but the point was, we were out in the community, supporting the community for peace and justice, and at that moment, it became not about supporting peace and justice. It became in being against the people across the street. That was a problem, because our message, and I say our message because that is my message, even though as a peace team member I wasn't spreading that message.
Sure.
But the message was, there's a better way to be, and that gets so lost when you're being against the site across the street, because you went from 11 blocks of your message down to 1.5 blocks of your message, and that message was lost in the fact that you're yelling at the people across the street. So the community wasn't made better through that action. So I think when we do things, we've got to be very very intentional about the way that we're doing them.
Yeah, it seems like it's just so much more productive to have these conversations outside of these really charged events, right? Or movement events. Because, you've been in protests, even I'm sure as a peacekeeper, there is a sense of adrenaline involved. I mean, it's very high energy, and from de-escalation training, once you're already kind of up there, it's hard to bring it back down.
Yeah, it can be, but there are many things that you can do to get yourself, in a situation where you're not escalating.
Well, mindfulness training, certainly.
Yep, that's actually, the C stands for calm and center. So mindfulness is a big part of that, being aware of things that are triggering you and being able to, override them using certain skills. It's
know if you have to remove yourself from a situation and get some time.
Right, and that's the thing about peace teams. We always work in groups of 2s and 3s because each person has different triggers.
Sure.
And it's not that we're not going to be triggered when somebody gets in our face and yells, but if we can alter, and switch out with somebody who's not triggered by that, then that creates peace in the situation. So, yeah.
That's a good point. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about, as I think it's one of the main goals of PACs, is helping people know how they can get involved in helping their community.
Right.
And you are a part of so many different organizations that I feel like you have a good understanding of where people can kind of fit in and feel like they're contributing to peace and justice.
Right. Yeah. So what I would suggest for anybody who's even remotely interested in finding out more about how they can be active in their community, there are so many organizations out there that are volunteer organizations. There's big ones, there's small ones. But my suggestion is, find something that you care about or that you're passionate about, and give an hour a week. Or if you can afford 2 hours of your time, give that. There are so many organizations that meet the needs of so many different people. If you're passionate about the climate, just here in Portland, we have at least 8 to 10 different organizations that are working specifically on those issues.
At least.
Sierra Club, and we have national ones and local ones. 350 PDX, Environment Oregon.
Essentially, I think that's the largest one in Oregon.
Opal, is huge. But yeah, there's lots. And if you're, more interested in issues around homelessness or poverty, there's so many organizations that need help.
Mm-hmm.
And the key is, you know what? If you're looking at the world and you're seeing that it's not how it should be, you're a part of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're not doing something to change that, then you're looking at something that is of your making.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I'm involved in so many different organizations, because I have a lot of different passions, but they're all around peace and justice. And I think there's many, many ways to get to a place where we have a more just and equitable society. And so what I do is when I find something that meets my needs as far as creating change in the world, and I'll check out those organizations and see if they, share my same values. And if they do, then I'll involve myself in any way that I can afford to do that, time-wise, because I am involved in many things. So, and everybody is busy.
Sure.
But everybody can afford an hour a week.
Mm-hmm.
And that 1 hour can make a huge difference in someone's life.
Who said it? Service is your rent for space on this planet. I think it was Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, I've heard that.
It's a great quote.
Mm-hmm. And everybody's capable. We're all capable of doing something to help somebody else.
Mm-hmm. And for me, that's where, in instances where I've been a part of organizations or what have you, where I'm directly helping others, is where I've felt the most fulfilled in my life.
Absolutely. And service leadership, because we live in a country filled with leaders, but if your primary goal is service leadership, then as a leader, you're serving rather than desiring some outcome from somebody else. You're serving others, and that's huge. So I do a lot of service leadership work. Most of the organizations I'm in, I serve on their boards, or I serve, in ways that allow me to help guide the direction that the organizations are going in. Because I want to make sure that we're leaning towards peace and justice, and I want to make sure that we're helping the oppressed and the needy, and I want to make sure that the things that we do are having the effects that they should be having. And then if they're not, finding ways that we can make change to do better.
Right the course.
Yeah, exactly. And to give service to those who need it the most. And also uplifting others in their leadership roles. Indigenous communities in America should be leading everything.
Yeah.
And we need to be supporting them in that. The people of color should be leading everything, and we should be supporting them in that. There's a knowledge base there that's wasted in America, and it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
It absolutely shouldn't be. We need to be upholding the values that put that at the forefront.
Well, I think that's one of the really powerful kind of tenets of conflict resolution is elicitive processes, where you're, working with the people that, need the service, are organizing it to essentially make sure that you're creating your program around their needs and their values and their way of working, instead of, using Western ways of programming in indigenous settings. It doesn't work.
Right. I agree with that. And I think that putting people, and not even putting, but just stepping back and allowing for the natural course of leadership to progress.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that's just huge.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking to someone last night who works with, she's a housing director for low-income housing, and there's a program called Sponsors, I believe, that is there to help formerly incarcerated people get housing and have affordable housing and community, and it's ran by people that were formerly incarcerated. You know, so it's like people that have in-depth knowledge of the topic or of, you know, what it's like to live that experience are the ones in charge of, you know, supplying the program for people. And I think stuff like that is what we need to see more of.
Yep, I agree. That's actually brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
The people that are affected by the programs that are out there are the people that should be directing how those programs work.
Exactly.
And that just seems so common sense to everybody I speak to.
Yeah.
And yet that's not what's happening.
Well, I mean, have you looked at Justin Trudeau's cabinet? It's incredible. I mean, not only is it a 50-50 split of men and women, but people. So I think the head of transportation used to be a bus driver.
Mm.
It's like people are in roles where they have direct experience with.
Right.
And what a concept.
Yeah, exactly. I'm thinking Betsy DeVos. Oh, geez. Scott Pruitt. Come on.
No comment.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's like we're being set up as in America. We're being set up for some serious change. And so in a lot of ways, the new presidency has gone about things in a way that's not status quo. And because of that, people are waking up. So I find what's going on right now, as horrific as it is, I see that there's an underlying blessing in it because more people are showing up into spaces where they've needed to show up for years and years and years and haven't. So if it's the fear of this administration or it's whatever it is, I really don't care because it is. People are showing up now where they weren't before, and that's huge.
I think anything that gets people to pay attention and be active, both in their community and, you know, how the world works, and knowledgeable and paying attention, is always good.
Right.
Because as soon as you are complacent and not paying attention to just the systems that move life forward, you're liable to being oppressed and taken advantage of.
Right. And we are. There is no doubt that the majority of America is being taken advantage of. But there's also the reality that we can change that. And we can change that together through nonviolent means. And it's working actively to do that. I mean, we cannot be ruled unless we choose to be ruled, and we choose to be ruled together.
Sure.
So we can equally together choose to not. And we are in an unjust situation, and people are being murdered and killed and harmed in a myriad of ways, and we can do something about that.
Yeah. Well,
and I think more today than in the past, that's happening.
Well, look at Venezuela right now.
Mm-hmm.
The entire country is essentially protesting the leadership. I'm pretty sure, is it Maduro that's president? He wanted to expand term limits.
Right.
And consolidate power.
That's a common tactic.
Yeah. Not having it.
Yeah, and a lot of what's going on in South America is, you know, of the United States of America's doing.
Oh, certainly. Just look at the Guatemalan Civil War.
Exactly. We go in and we break a lot of other countries. And in doing so, I believe you can't continue to ruin things and not become ruined yourself.
That's an interesting perspective.
And we're seeing that today. We're seeing, what we're doing in Syria, what we're doing in Afghanistan, what we're doing in Iraq. All these things that are going on that we are a part of. And I say we very loosely because,
Sure.
in all honesty, it's not we. Because we, the people, have certain values that aren't being upheld in the way that the American leadership is working in the world.
Yeah.
And yet we feel helpless. We feel helpless to do anything about that. But that's not the reality. Because we are actually in charge. We just need to take charge.
I think that's also a matter of people knowing about what happens. Just look at all of declassified CIA documents, or things that come up years and years after the fact. Like, no one really knew about our dealings with Central America and South America when it was happening. I mean, there was programs for sterilization, practicing how to get rebel communities to overthrow dictators, or not dictators, democratically elect presidents,
Yeah.
and putting in a dictator.
Yeah, our CIA has done some very terrible things. And so we go in, we ruin these countries because they have something we want, whether it be oil or farmland or whatever. And I suggest, if you're listening to this podcast, please go and look and see what we're actually doing right now in Africa. It's horrendous. It's absolutely horrendous, the things that are going on there for their oil, for their
diamonds.
Yeah,
Our
diamonds.
precious materials for computers.
Yeah, so it's a sad situation, and there are so many things wrong right now, but there are so many people working to right them.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not one of those people working to right them, I highly, highly suggest that you find someone to volunteer with.
Mm-hmm.
It's huge. It can make all the difference. You could be the fulcrum. You could be where everything changes, because we need one more person, and that one more person is you.
That's a good sentiment.
Yeah.
So what are you up to right now?
So right now I'm preparing for the People's Climate March.
When is that?
That is on April 29th, and there's several of them throughout the area. There's several of them throughout America. The one we're doing is here in Portland, and the Portland Peace Team is working with Greenpeace to supply peacekeepers for this one, and Opal is doing the overall organizing of it. But this is a really neat People's Climate March, because it's actually the frontline communities are the Oregon Just Transition Alliance. So they're taking the central leading role in the Portland's People's Climate Movement, which is pretty cool, because we get to join with them in solidarity and put those voices, lift those voices up to the leadership, so that they are the leadership. Sure. And we're doing the things in accordance with those values. So it's pretty huge. And of course, I'm doing a lot with the Oregon Fellowship of Reconciliation, and actually Fellowship of Reconciliation USA. We're doing a lot of work on anti-oppression work. We've been working with Black Lives Matter and other various organizations trying to change the dialogue around those issues.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, so I'm actually doing quite a bit. To sit here and list it would be ad nauseum.
Well, and you're close to graduating.
Yes, I am. I actually graduate this term, at the end of this term, finally, and then I'll be off into the real world until I start my PhD.
Yeah, same here. I don't know if I'm going to do the PhD, though.
Oh, really?
I don't know.
Oh, you should. It'd be good for us.
Okay, you can read Adam's profile on peaceactionexhibition.org under our projects tab and trainers. He'll be performing some trainings for us for de-escalation, coalition building, and other awesome stuff, as will I. As always, remember to like and subscribe to this channel, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
My pleasure.